Mew EX has some weird interactions in Pokemon Pocket that are just not explained at all by the card text. We're going to take a look at every single weird Mew EX interaction so far, from Ditto to Torterra to Regigigas, and a few you've probably never even guessed. We're going to start with the easy ones, work our way up to the crazy ones, and show you all of our science so that you don't have to figure this out in the middle of a game. Plus, it's just kind of cool. Experiment number 1. What happens when you copy a copy move? And by the way, you can follow along down in the comments section and let us know which ones you knew already and which ones were a surprise to you. Or just sit back, relax, let the science wash over you. Can Mew copy Ditto, and can Ditto copy Mew, and what happens if they do? Does Mew copying Mew create an infinite loop where you just keep copying and the attack never happens? If Mew copies Ditto, does that now target your bench for the copy? What do you think happens? The answer is very simple. It just doesn't work. Copy moves can't copy other copy moves. The game will just not let you do it. That means that Ditto's move, copy anything, doesn't actually copy anything, because it won't work on other Dittos or other Mews. Now, don't get me wrong, you can still copy Mew's non-copy attack, the 20 damage thing, but you just can't copy anything else. Alright, that was pretty easy. Let's move on to a really crazy one, just out of nowhere. Dehlmise and Lapras. Dehlmise has an attack that does 20 damage, with just 1 leaf energy. It's pretty good, but it does a lot more extra damage if you attach 3 additional leaf energy. But what happens when Mew copies that? Does it never do the extra damage? Does it do extra damage, but you need to have 4 leaf energy attached, just like Dehlmise? Do you need 6 of any energy type attached to make it happen? 5 energy? 4? How does it work? It turns out that Mew EX's 3 energy that it uses to activate genetic hacking do not count as extra energy. But anything past that will count as extra energy. So for example, if Mew EX has 3 of any type of energy, you can copy Dehlmise's move, but to get the extra damage, you need 3 additional energy that are not counted in genetic hacking's energy cost, that are all leaf energy. So you could do it with 2 water, 1 psychic, and 3 leaf, for example, and that would give you the extra damage. The same thing works when you copy Lapras's attack. So when you see text that says extra energy, what that means is energy plus the 3 energy you use for genetic hacking. And don't worry about the order you attach energy, that doesn't matter at all. The game will automatically do this in the way that's kindest to you, which is pretty nice. But you need 3 extra energy of the right type beyond the cost of genetic hacking. That's how it works. Let's go back to an easy one. That was a little too hard. Pikachu and Arceus. These are Pokemon that do extra damage depending on how many Pokemon you have on your bench. But if my Mew is copying your Pikachu, whose bench are we talking about? Mine or yours? And what about Arceus? And do they have to be electric types or psychic types, or does it even matter? If I'm using Mew to copy Pikachu, who needs electric types, but Mew's a psychic type, how does that work? Well, it's actually really simple. It turns out that when Mew copies Pikachu, it just means your bench, the Mew player's bench. So Mew sort of becomes Pikachu, right? And then you do really need your bench Pokemon to be electric type in order to get the extra damage, and of course with Arceus, it doesn't matter. Pretty simple and pretty intuitive, and pretty unfortunate. It means that Mew EX is not very good against Pikachu EX. What about energy discard Pokemon like Palkia or Charizard? What happens if I don't have energy of the right type to discard? Right? What happens? I mean, if I'm imitating Charizard and the move says to discard 2 fire energy, but I don't have any, or what if I only have 1 fire energy and a bunch of other different types of energy that I use for genetic hacking? How does Palkia work, right? It turns out that if you don't have any energy of the type you're supposed to discard, you don't have to discard any energy at all. Pretty cool, huh? This actually makes Mew a little bit better than Charizard when you're copying energy discard Charizard, because you don't have to discard energy. If you do have the correct energy, you will discard it. And if you only have some of the correct energy, you will discard as much as you can. So the game tries to discard the energy as much as it can, but it won't make you discard energy if you don't have the right type. Did you predict that? Like, the fact that it'll discard 1 of the 2 energy if you only have 1, that's weird. I wouldn't have thought that would happen. But that's pretty cool, right? Let's take a look at the next experiment, Revenge Marshadow. Whose Pokemon has to have been knocked out for me to copy you and Revenge to activate, right? Let's say Marshadow knocks out one of my Pokemon. If I bring in Mew and copy Marshadow, do I get the 100 damage Revenge? The answer is yes. It turns out that when you copy Marshadow, it counts as if your Pokemon were knocked out, then you get the extra damage. If their Pokemon were knocked out, that doesn't count. And I also don't know how that would be possible. So basically, Mew becomes Marshadow for all intents and purposes, and if they knock out one of your Pokemon, your Mew comes in, your Mew will get Revenge. Alright, let's take a look at the next one. Damage ramping Pokemon. This is a weird one. We're going to another weird one. Cyclizar and Togekiss will both do additional damage if they attack the previous turn. But how does that work with Mew? Will I do additional damage? Or will I not? And wait a minute, if you switch between Cyclizar and Togekiss, and I still copy you, do I get Cyclizar's additional damage buff onto the copied Togekiss attack? And will Cynthia work on Mew if I then copy that Togekiss attack? So could I turn a Togekiss attack into like goober damage, even though it shouldn't be? Let's find out. So it turns out that when I copied Cyclizar, I did get Cyclizar's buff. I did get the buff that would let my attack do additional damage next turn, but it didn't work. And when I copied Togekiss, same thing. I got the buff, but it didn't work. When I looked at the buff, I found out why. The buff specifically says that using the specific attack name will do increased damage. But Mew doesn't use the specific attack name. Mew's attack is genetic hacking. You're copying their attack over acceleration, overdrive smash, whatever it is, you're copying their attack, but you're not using it. You're using genetic hacking. So even though you have a buff that says over acceleration will do more damage, you didn't use over acceleration. You just copied it, which is not using it, so you don't get the extra damage. And as expected, Cynthia will not work on Mew because it only works on the Pokemon Togekiss. So, to explain how all that works, you will get the buff. It won't do anything because you're not actually using their moves. You're using genetic hacking, copying their moves. And Cynthia won't work because you're not using that Pokemon. How wild is that? That was just bizarre, but here's an even more bizarre one. So far, we've seen a lot of cases where it's worse to use Mew EX. Here's one where it's better. If Mew EX copies Torterra's move, and remember, Torterra kind of self-disables when you copy its move. It won't let you use it twice in a row because it's such a powerful move, right? That's the weakness to the move. Mew EX will copy the buff. But since the buff specifically says Torterra can't attack next turn, hold on now. You're not Torterra, you're Mew. Once again, you do get the buff, or debuff in this case. It's a red cross sign that means you can't attack next turn. But the buff specifically says Torterra can't attack next turn. You're not Torterra, so you can attack again. You can even copy the move again and use it twice in a row, even though the move is not supposed to be used twice in a row. How cool is that? Now, this is an extra fun one, and crazy credit to Toshibyna for thinking of this. What exactly happens when you copy Goldengo's attack, which, lets you flip a coin for each metal energy you have? But you don't have any metal energy. What happens then? This is a guess. Do you flip a 0 coin? What happens when you flip 0 coins? The attack will go off and it will just do 0 damage. A little anticlimactic, but that is technically what it looks like when you flip 0 coins. Now you know. Now you know what a 0 coin flip looks like. Alright, so now what happens when Mew copies Weedle? Weedle's ability Multiply will give you another Weedle, but when Mew uses it, does it give you another Mew or a Weedle? What happens? The answer is simple. It gives you a Weedle. It specifically says it gives you a Weedle, so copying it won't suddenly make it give you a Mew. It'll still give you a Weedle. Pretty simple. Now, I wanted to test Link Pokemon. These are Pokemon whose attacks gain additional effects based on their Link abilities when Arceus is on the field. Now, we tested a lot of different things. We tested the opponent having Arceus, me having Arceus on the bench, both of us having Arceus, and then Mew copies the attack. But nothing I did could ever get the link effect. The reason is the link ability puts a buff on your Pokemon. So for example, Carnivine with Link will put a buff on Carnivine when Arceus is on the field from the ability. But Mew doesn't have that buff because it doesn't have the Link ability, so even when Link is active, it will never appear on Mew. Mew will never get the buff. Does that make sense? Basically, Mew cannot benefit from Link effects with Arceus, since it's in an ability and not the attack. Alright, one final little test here. Heatran and Regigigas. Heatran does more damage if there's damage on Heatran, and Regigigas will do more damage the more damage is done to Regigigas. But whose health bar matters? Mew's health bar, or the Pokemon you're copying? Where Heatran is concerned, Mew will not do more damage if Heatran is damaged and Mew isn't. Mew becomes the user of the attack, so Mew has to have the damage in order to do extra damage as Heatran. Similarly, when Mew copies Regigigas, Mew will do damage based on the difference in Mew's health, not the difference in Regigigas' health. So Mew sort of becomes the Pokemon for the sake of seeing whether or not damage was done. If any of these weird Mew interactions did not make sense, please let me know. I'll try to explain them more in the comments section. We do live streams once in a while where Toshibyna, myself, and maybe someone else will test a bunch of different things to try to figure out how all this stuff works, and then I'll make a video like this summarizing it so that you can just get all of the answers in a nice, neat little video. If you enjoyed this, consider subscribing and liking to support the channel. It helps us out a lot because, you know, not everyone stays for all the long hours of live stream science while we're testing this stuff out. So really appreciate it. That's all for now, and we'll catch you later.